Now, I don't want to sound like the boy who keeps yelling fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire. And then when there's really a fire, nobody gets up. But let me tell you, we are in trouble on this gambling thing. I'm a gambling type of guy, but we got to get a hold of this gambling thing. It looks to me like it's going to get worse before it gets better. I don't even know what getting better looks like. What I do know is that there's a mad rush right now for money, gambling-wise. Everyone wants a piece of it. And the fact of the matter, I've talked about this before, we'll talk about it again, is that most people lose. Fact of the matter is that it can be a problem for some gamblers. It's called problem gambling. Fact of the matter is this whole thing is going to explode. We're going to have people who are addicted. We're going to have some point shaving, fixing things going on. Will we survive? We probably will. But what I want to tell you right now is that unless we get our ducks in order, unless we are vigilant about people who are gambling and try to protect them from going over to the dark side, this is going to end out very, very poorly. And if it ends out very, very poorly, I'm going to be gambling mad. Hi, and welcome again to the latest edition of Gambling Mad. I am your podcast host, Norman Chad. Gambling Mad, brought to you as always by Fritos. Picked fresh from Frito trees in Central California, straight to your grocery store the next day. And by the refreshing taste of Fresca. Refreshing, rejuvenating, ridiculously good. Fresca. My friends, Fritos and Fresca, it's a meal. Today we are going to talk about the Rudy Gobert situation. He went like this. NBA did not like it. We're going to defend LeBron James. We're going to talk about a lot of degens. We're going to talk about the last Hooters in West Virginia closing. I never saw it coming. But first we're going to talk about this gambling problem that I was just speaking about. And let's start with Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert he had a sixth foul to foul out of a game for the Timberwolves. As he fouled out, he turned to official referee Scott Foster and he went like this. Money, money, money. Not good. And then he doubled down on his mistake after the game. And let me just quote you from what he said afterwards. He said, "My reaction, which I think is truth, even if it's the truth, it wasn't the time for me to react that way." That was this business. He said, "I should not have done that. I cost my team the game." He said, "I made some mistakes. I airballed a dunk. Mistakes happen. Referees make mistakes too," he said. "But sometimes I think it's more than mistakes. I think everyone that's in this league knows I think it's got to get better." He said that he's the bad guy again that speaks what I think is the truth. In speaking about gambling, he said, "I think it's hurting our game. I know the betting and all that is becoming bigger and bigger, but it shouldn't feel that way." So for his trouble, for going like this to Scott Foster, and for then speaking and criticizing the officiating after the game, and essentially implicating the fact that some of the officials' calls have to do with sports betting, the NBA fined him the maximum they could, $100,000. Now, the fact of the matter is, he's making some reasonable points, okay? And we've got to come to grips with the fact that now gambling legalized in about 38 states, with it becoming so prevalent in terms of it's in the palm of your hand. You can just use your phone and online gambling in a lot of places. That we've got to talk about the risks involved as far as the games not being on the up and up. But I will say this. We are going to see another scandal or two or three because of the increase in gambling. But sports has always survived it. You know, baseball survived its point shaving scandal, its Black Sox scandal in 1919. College basketball survived point fixing back in the 50s. The NFL has survived gambling from its players and suspended players over gambling going back to the 1960s. It's been all over. Tennis matches are fixed. Boxing matches are fixed. Soccer internationally has had a lot of problems with it. Boxing, of course, people take dives, but all those sports have survived. So we will survive it again. But it's coming. It's coming. The thing that worries me more is the grip it's going to have on a whole new generation. And this is the problem. You know, I have a poker background, and 20 years ago we had a poker boom with Chris Moneymaker winning the World Series of Poker World Championship out of nowhere. And all of a sudden everybody was playing poker. And what we had then, especially for a lot of kids in college, is they got enamored with poker. And we had what I called a brain drain. Not a major brain drain, but a brain drain. Some smart kids from college decided, you know, I'm going to play poker for a living. It's an easier way to make a living. So a lot of these guys, some of them made it, some of them did it. But what they decided to do was play poker instead of doing what they probably would have done otherwise. They could have become doctors, lawyers, engineers, teachers, you know, Wall Street hedge fund managers, God forbid. But instead of pursuing all that, they pursued poker. And so a lot of smart minds, that's why I call it a brain drain, we lost them from being, you know, contributors, better contributors to our community. We lost them essentially to gambling. Now it's even a greater problem. We're not talking about a brain drain. We're talking about almost taking babies out of the crib and indoctrinating them in sports betting when they're not ready for it. Because in the colleges now, it's so easy to start betting. You know, you always had a bookie somewhere in your dorm or your frat. Now you can do it, like I said, in the palm of your hand. And when it's college students, you're talking about 18 and 19-year-olds who aren't, they're not emotionally fulfilled yet. They're not intellectually ready. They're not quite mature enough. And this gambling thing, if it isn't watched closely, could just send them into another orbit. It could destroy their lives before they have a life. And this gets back to my old thing. You know, I try to find humor in everything. But the fact of the matter is, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. All right? All this gambling, all forms of gambling, sports betting, online poker, whatever you want to do, lottery, it all should be legal. You should be allowed to do what you want to do with your own money. But the fact of the matter is that most people should not gamble. Okay? Almost everybody's going to lose, especially if you're betting in sports. Almost everybody loses. And what we need to remember is that there's two categories. One category is benign, and one is potentially tragic. The benign category is people who just like gambling as entertainment. You know, just an avocation, a weekend hobby, throwing a bet here and there. Just enjoy it to get action on the game, do something when they're in Las Vegas. That's all fine. But the other side of the coin here is when it becomes problem gambling. And the fact of the matter is that problem gambling is easier to hide, particularly these days, than, say, problem drinking. It's easier to spot a friend of yours who's an alcoholic or is drinking too much. But gambling, you know, you can do it from your bedroom, you can do it from your office, and it can reach the point where it's so bad, it destroys someone's life before you even know that they were even gambling. That's why I tell people, if you gamble, if you know somebody who gambles, you got to be very vigilant. You got to make sure that you cut off the problem before it becomes a problem. You know, yeah, this podcast is called Gambling Mad. I talk about gambling all the time. But I warn people about gambling all the time. Am I a hypocrite? We're all hypocrites. I feel the pain every night. But heed Rudy Gobert's words. There's some dark clouds out there. They're coming into town, and they're going to screw something up some way, somewhere, somehow. And then there'll be a fallout, and then we will move on. All right. This next story, gambling related, I don't even know how to deal with. I need your help. It comes from Australia, where there's still greyhound racing, and we'll get into that in a moment. But it's a really weird story, because it starts with rugby. It starts with a National Rugby League exhibition in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. And in that game, there's an indigenous Australian rugby player by the name of Ezra Mam. Okay, another player that day from Australia, Spencer Leniu, was given an 8-match suspension because they determined that he called Ma'am a monkey during this exhibition match in Las Vegas. That's bad enough. Now, on that same day, there was going to be a greyhound race involving a racing dog who is named after Ezra Mam. He's called Ezra Man. And on that same day, on the online betting company Sportsbet, which is taking wagers on this game and has comments, there was a comment from somebody that on their chat area, in which they called this 2-year-old greyhound, Ezra Man, who was the favorite. They called they said this, it read, "Go Bananas." Let's see if we can get some positive headlines tonight. So, first we have the human, who's called a monkey. Then we have the greyhound dog with the bananas reference. Now, I didn't know you can make racist comments to a greyhound dog. I'll be honest with you. I love dogs. I didn't know there could be a racist element here. But because of that particular comment on site, Sportsbet suspended betting on the race after that comment started circulating around. And they put out a statement, "We're extremely disappointed, highly offensive, and inappropriate comments supplied by a third party were automatically published on our platforms. We do not tolerate hate speech, discrimination, and racism." Good for them. So, a couple things that we're going to talk about here briefly. First of all, the racism thing. This never stops, okay? You know, race has been bubbling right under the surface of America since the beginning. In fact, it wasn't even bubbling under the surface at the beginning. We had slavery the first, 80 plus years we were a nation until the Civil War, until the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. We even had slavery after that. Can't get rid of racism. We can try all we can to get rid of racism. Can't get rid of racism. It's kind of ridiculous. What we can do is get rid of greyhound racing. Now, I've been talking about this a lot the last few years. Nobody likes to hear it. It's about time that we get a little more enlightened. You know, we should not be using animals, making them do stuff for our entertainment, for our pleasure, for our recreation, for our gambling purposes. Greyhound racing should not exist. Florida, in fact, one of the biggest greyhound racing states in America, is in the process of getting rid of greyhound racing finally over the next few years. Greyhound racing should not exist. Horse racing should not exist. Iditarod sled dog racing should not exist. Bass fishing should not exist. Bass fishing competitions. Elephants who are in the circus shouldn't have to be in the circus. If an elephant wants to be an actuary, an elephant should be an actuary. Shouldn't be forced to be in the circus. All these things that we use animals for, not to mention we eat them, we shouldn't be doing. So, let's get rid of greyhound racing. Let's continue to try to get rid of racism. Good luck on that one. You know, they're getting rid of all the Hooters. Not all the Hooters, some of the Hooters. Now, this is not bad news. Okay? I mean, I'll talk about my Hooters experience in a second. But last month, the last remaining Hooters in the state of West Virginia was going to be demolished. And they decided, the residents of Kanawha City, where it was, they decided to have a candlelight vigil, according to WCHS TV. And they actually got hundreds and hundreds of people to show up, including a bunch of former Hooters employees, all back together for one last time. Residents of the town talking about how important Hooters was to them. In fact, the corporate office, the Hooters corporate office, sent a box of calendars. I'm not sure about that significance, but sent a box of calendars to distribute to those who attended the vigil that night. Okay. Do I shed a tear for Hooters going down the drain? No, I do not. Okay. Hooters, it's hard to explain Hooters. Try to explain Hooters to a 6-year-old. Try to explain Hooters to someone visiting from, I don't know, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Asia, Eastern Asia. I was in a Hooters once. This would have been in the late 1990s, after a work function in Jacksonville, Florida. My coworker said, all right, let's go have dinner at Hooters. I said, let's go have dinner at Hooters. I mean, let's go have dinner. But who's eating at Hooters? And one of the producers I was with, oh, the chicken sandwich is delicious. We went to Hooters. I ordered a chicken sandwich. Delicious. Not so much. In fact, like almost every person or every man who goes into Hooters, the only thing I really remember about Hooters, besides the fact that the chicken sandwich was pretty bad, were the Hooters. Were the women walking around with cleavage. Now, I didn't want cleavage that night. I wanted dinner. Dinner. I would have killed for a Popeyes 2 or 3 piece combo that night. Chicken sandwich at Hooters. Say goodbye to Hooters in West Virginia. Put the flag at half-mast, if I can find a flag that has any Hooters significance. We now go to one of our recurring features. D-Gen's going to D-Gen. A lot of D-Gens out there. We're here to tell you about them. This first D-Gen, it's an unusual story coming out of China. The man's name is Liu Changjiang, 33 years old. And he went to Singapore, lost a lot of money, gambling. And he now is accused of faking his own kidnapping in an effort to have his relatives pay a phony ransom of about $4,200 to get him back. So he was due back into China about a week or so ago. He didn't show up. According to the South China Morning Post. His aunt, Madame Liu Yabo, started to receive some messages on the WeChat from some anonymous individual who said that Liu had been kidnapped. And this abductor, set forward some documents to show that this is, we got Liu here, we got his travel, we got all his stuff here. You got to do something for your nephew. And Liu's family, well, maybe they didn't like Liu Changjiang. They didn't say we're going to send you the money. They said, well, let's check with law enforcement first. Can't blame them. Smart move. But if they really love the kid, 33-year-old, if they really love him, I think you just pay the money. You pay the $4,000 plus and you move on. But they said, no, let's check with law enforcement first. So they got in touch with law enforcement. The police investigated, and guess what? Just a couple hours after the ransom demand, they found Liu Changjiang in a hotel, just hanging out. Did not appear to be kidnapped. He's been charged with attempted cheating and faces up to 10 years in prison if convicted. He has pleaded not guilty. We wish him luck in his legal battle. D-Gen's going to G-Gen. Story number 2. Doesn't involve gambling, but it involves a new trend that we're not happy to see. This comes out of Saudi Arabia and reported by the Daily Star there. Rariha Al-Qasimi, a reporter covering an event in Riyadh earlier this month, and a Saudi Arabian robot came up to her and during a live shot slapped her on the ass. Okay. Now, she pushed the robot's hand away and said, don't you do that. Anyway, before this situation developed, the robot, who introduced himself as Android Muhammad, told her, I was manufactured and developed here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as a national project to demonstrate our achievements in the field of artificial intelligence. Okay. Nice to see that artificial intelligence can reflect human stupidity. Yeah, it's bad enough that guys over the years have slapped women in the ass once in a while. Shouldn't do that. Have pinched them maybe once in a while. Shouldn't do that. That they like to take their hands and do stuff with their hands they really shouldn't do. Okay? Those are men. Men are pigs. Okay? This is artificial intelligence. This is a robot. Shouldn't it be a greater intelligence? Isn't that what we're trying to get to? DGen's gonna DGen, story number 3. And this is one you might have heard about from in the last year or so, where an employee of the Jacksonville Jaguars, a former employee of the Jacksonville Jaguars NFL team, he was the financial planning and analysis manager for the franchise. He got sentenced this week to, I think, 6 or 7 years imprisonment on federal charges of wire fraud and illegal monetary transactions. He embezzled, over the course of 3.5 years, millions and millions of dollars from the Jaguars. Now, obviously, they did not have a good system of protection on this. He somehow manipulated their virtual credit card program and did this with some scheme in which he's charging stuff here and a fraudulent thing here and this and that. And his lawyer, and the man's name is Amit Patel, his lawyer, Alex King, had contended that most of his clients' embezzling and illegal activity stemmed from his gambling addiction. Makes sense. No question that he gambled. The lawyer said that he used 99% of the funds to cover gambling losses. Well, turns out that's not exactly true. I'm sure he had gambling losses. He went to a lot of gambling spots. But he also had a lot of expenses. So some of it was gambling losses. Some of it was what we call the high life. Okay? Okay. He spent $278,000 on hotels and rental properties. He spent almost $80,000 on private jets. He spent $77,000 for a luxury spa experience. That must have been quite a spa. He used nearly $70,000 to purchase tickets to events like Formula One and World Cup. He also had a shopping problem. Okay? He spent nearly $600,000 in Apple products. I'm not happy when I have to put down $1,500 for a new Mac Airbook every 2 or 3 years. $600K at Apple, $40,000 at Amazon and Best Buy. That's not so much money. He liked sports memorabilia. He purchased Tiger Woods' 1996 putter for $47,000. Okay. Maybe he had a gambling problem. Seemed to me he had a spending problem on top of that. Big shopper. Amit Patel. He could have faced a maximum sentence of 30 years. Probably lucky to be just going upstate for 6 or 7 years. That brings us to LeBron James. For some reason, LeBron James he absorbs so much criticism. I don't understand it. I understand when he's talking about stuff off the court, when he's talking about issues, that he's going to bring a lot onto himself. And I wish he didn't speak as often as he did. He seems to speak about anything, anytime, anywhere. I often disagree with him. I just wish he, again, would somehow just temper what he has to say as a big platform. So I wish he'd pick his spots better. But what really kills me about the LeBron thing, though, on the court, great player, but people seem to just nitpick at him all the time. Now, part of it's the whole LeBron versus Michael Jordan thing. We got to determine which one's better. It's not enough just to determine that they both are very, very good. They're both among the best who ever did it. They might be the best two who ever did it. Even though I'd bring up Bill Russell, I'd bring up Oscar Robertson, I'd bring up Magic Johnson, I'd bring up, who else would I bring up? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But here's the thing. LeBron James is a target for a lot of critics. And that is the subject of this week's foreign language rant. LeBron James es un gran jugador de basketball. Pero todo el mundo te encanta criticarlo. Durante 20 años ha sido el mejor del mundo, 5 campeonatos. Pero Skip Bayless dice que LeBron es terrible y horrible. No. Skip Bayless es terrible y horrible y estúpido. No me hagas hablar de Skip Bayless. LeBron James es tremendo, es maravilloso y excelente. Enough is enough. Eso es todo. Vaya con Dios. And that is this week's foreign language rank. We will now return to English to sign you off from another edition of Gambling Mad. My name is Norman Chad, filling in for Norman Chad. We'll see you next time. If you're going to roll the dice, make sure they're loaded.